Christy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today is June 20th, and there is a tweet that I left alone, standing alone, because I wanted you to talk about it by itself. It's so important. And it read, earlier today, Flotus, Melania, and I were honored to welcome King Felipe VI and Queen, Letizia of Spain to the White House. What do you make of this? What is it that the fake news will not tell you about this visit, Thomas?
Betsy, this is a setup. You're just getting me to talk about things that are so controversial and so far-reaching.
Well, let's just say this is for advanced students. So if you start listening to Thomas and you don't know what he's talking about, then back out. But if you're one of his advanced students, you're going to want to listen to this.
If you read the article, part 2 of All Roads Lead to Armageddon, you'll get the same information where we actually documented and tell you the same information. But it's very, very complex. Let's just start from the beginning. Okay, we have King of Spain, Felipe VI, the son of Juan Carlos, who was, of course, the King of Spain. But during the time that the fascists took over, he was kicked out. But then after 1939, he was brought back. He's a tutelary head of Spain, but doesn't live in Spain. He lives in Geneva, Switzerland. Isn't that interesting? And he's of the House of Savoy, but he's also of the House of the Merovingians. Now, this is critical to understand who Philip is, and it's really a very big story. But let's also point out that the Windsors, which is really a German family, are also claim the Merovingian lineage. Now, why is that critical? Because the Merovingian lineage claims to be of the blood of Jesus of Nazareth. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but you can look this up, and there are many books written about this.
All you have to do is watch a Dan Brown movie.
That's exactly right. Watch what was the first one that he had? It was about that. It was about that exact topic.
Yeah, it was.
And so, and these things are true and partially true, and they're mythology and they're legend, and they're all rolled together. So what I'm about to tell you sounds crazy because it is partially crazy, and that people actually believe these things is partially crazy, but this is the way that it is. Who do you want to be the king of Jerusalem? The Merovingians that are the Spanish lineage that would have been the continuation of Catholicism through Juan Carlos and Philip VI, because they are the people who, through their monarchy, they have taken a vow to be guardians of the Pope. They are called the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. Now, I know you've never heard of that before, but if you had heard of it, you'd know that it's truly a Jesuit-driven organization. And you'd also know that the Jesuits have now taken over the entire Catholic Church. And if you could imagine for a moment that the Jesuits are not truly Catholic, neither are they Christian, and they don't care that the mythology of the Merovingian blood lineage of Jesus of Nazareth is real or not. They intend to use it in what is called apocalyptic theology. They want Armageddon to happen right now. And so they're trying to bring this on through political machinations, and have for a long time. And so the Jesuits now have taken control because Francis I is a Jesuit. First Jesuit Pope ever. He replaced the head of the Jesuits, called the Black Pope. And so, first off, the head of the Pope...
the head of the Pope?
The head of the Pope of the Roman Church. The head of the Roman Catholic Church. We call the White Pope, because he wears white. But the head of the Jesuits is called the Black Pope. And that's because they are a special organization that has taken an extraordinary vow to protect the Pope and to do whatever it takes. And in the old days, they were even given pre-forgiveness for any sins they might commit in the name of the Pope, in protecting the Pope, including murder, including every type of sin there is. And so the Jesuits were noted very, very well as being kind of warrior priest monks. And they were started by Ignatius of Loyola long after the Knights of Malta, who are basically a merger of the Templar Knights and the Knights Hospitaller. So the Knights of Malta are a leftover from the monarchy. They all, the Knights of Malta, take a vow of fealty to the Pope through the Knights of Malta. Now, you can take this vow of fealty either through the Holy Order of Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre, the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre, or you can take it through the Knights of Malta. Either way, you take a vow to the Pope. So you can either do this through the King of Spain, Philip VI, and his father, Juan Carlos, or you can do it from the Queen of England and Prince Charles and Prince William.
Trump is aligning himself with Philippe VI instead of the evil Queen Elizabeth who runs Serco and SES and the Crown Agents.
Correct. That's where I'm going with this.
That's why this meeting is so phenomenal.
People don't know this, and I'm going. You will have to either check our article. You can go to Wikipedia and check it. But the king of the Ibero-American Union, or what's called the Organization of Ibero-American States, the president of that is Juan Carlos, and that means that 700 million people, 28, well, actually more than 28 nations, the entire European Union, every nation on the Mediterranean, and every Spanish or Portuguese-speaking nation in South America all take a vow of fealty to the president of the Ibero-American Alliance. 712 million people. That's part of it, actually. That's the alliance has 28 nations, but there are actually more nations that have that. But what I'm telling you is each nation actually says, we will obey the president of the Ibero-American Alliance. Anyone ever mention that to anyone? Anyone ever point out that the entire European Union, every single nation, is part of this alliance? And basically, whether you know it or not?
Oh, no. All of ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, I mean, they're all running this story.
I doubt anyone even noticed Philip VI came, especially them, because they don't even know who he is.
Well,
because they've done no investigative journalism in their entire life as a journalist.
Right. Go ahead.
Okay, so are you getting a picture here as Betsy just painted it and cut to the quick?
Sorry.
Why did Britain join the EU and then has decided to get out? As we told you, the Queen went over to see what she could steal. When she found out what was going on, it was being set up so that all the nations in the European Union and all the nations around the Mediterranean will all work together. Is that not what just happened? Are they not all one now? Yes, they are. And if you take all of South America, who's in South America right now? Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda? Isn't that interesting? And who are the Jesuits? They are basically warrior monks who love war, and they want their idea that Jesus Christ will incarnate again, and he will rule the world with an iron fist and a sword, and he'll come on a white horse as a conquering hero of Jerusalem. And so the whole focus on Jerusalem, the Philip VI is the king of Jerusalem. He was that is part of his titles that he holds, and so is Juan Carlos. The Queen of England owns large parts of Jerusalem, including Temple Mount. Okay, a little shock for people. The Queen of England is very, very, very concerned because what does she represent? She represents the Protestants. She represents the other Merovingian lineage that claims direct descendancy from Jesus of Nazareth and as the King of Jerusalem. Now, the Jesuits have been protecting the King of Jerusalem, the House of Savoy, through the House of the Merovingians, which is Philip VI, for quite some time, and before that, Juan Carlos. They are not protecting the Queen. The Queen was protected by the Rothschilds. Now, here's the problem. When the Jesuits literally created new Masonic orders called Frater Lucas, which means Brothers of the Light, which are called, that was Adam Weishoff's group called the Illuminati, it was so Jews, through the Jesuits, which is strange because Jesuits were Catholics and Masons really weren't Catholic, but the Jesuits rewrote the Masonic orders and they wrote it so the Jews could get in. And so the Rothschilds got into the Illuminati order through the Jesuits so that they would then be the bankers for this long lineage House of Savoy. And for some of our friends out there, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Yes, these dynasties of Europe go directly back to Egypt, to the pharaohs of Egypt. Yes, that is true. But so do the dynasties of, well, basically all European countries, really, when it comes down to it. So these types of conspiracies, well, some parts of them are inflated and conflated and confabulated, but some parts of them are quite real. So this is the battle going on right now. George Soros is standing up for the EU because it is basically the Soros nation. And the Jesuits are supporting Soros because they love to see disorder, because the Vatican Bank moves in and takes economic terroristic advantage of every country that George Soros does too.
Well, the Vatican also takes advantage of the refugee monies that come, for resettlement.
Every refugee brings money to the Pope. That's why he worships them and tells all of us to worship them. He worships open borders because open borders, which is nothing more than George Soros's philosophy, is insanity, first off. Second off, it destroys all nations. Third off, there's no advantage to it. And fourth off, it creates human trafficking and war and economic instability, social instability, which then can be capitalized on by economic terrorists like George Soros, the rogue CIA banks, the rogue CIA, the Vatican Bank, on, and of course the Queen. So the Queen is in a pitched battle right now, because they voted to get out of the EU when they saw what's happening, and they're trying to go back to being their own sovereign, because they still have a bid to be the King of Jerusalem and the direct blood lineage of Jesus of Nazareth, which is, of course, as I told you, all myth. But it doesn't matter. They believe this stuff. People believe this stuff. So what happened with Francis I, the Pope? He turned from being the white Pope to the gray Pope when he said that Jesus Christ, Mohammed, Buddha are all the same entity. In other words, he became the gray Pope. Because why? He has said many, many times that the United Nations and the World Council of Churches, which has now got two different headquarters that they want to use. They either want to use Jerusalem, Astana, Kazakhstan, or Geneva, Switzerland. Now, why is that? They're fighting over Jerusalem, but if the Savoy family, the family of Juan Carlos and Philip, get the bid, they will be in Geneva. The United Nations will probably move to Geneva. If it doesn't, and Francis actually continues to go further into fascism, he'll end up in Kazakhstan as the head of the World Church, because the United Nations will move there. An entire city has been built and prepared for that. Astana, Kazakhstan. So what we have here are two bids. This is between what you call the Jesuit Catholic group in Geneva, Switzerland, which is where the Bank for International Settlements is. It's where the original League of Nations was, which should have been called the Destruction of Nations, because that's all the UN is destruction of nation states. And then you have the UN that Trump is kicking out, of America. That's very clear. And it's got to move somewhere. And they're not going to move to Geneva because these are the globalists. You see, the Catholics through the King of Spain and that Ibero-American alliance could simply say that the head of the UN is who? Philip VI. Who's that? He's not only the King of Spain, he's basically the king of about 50-some nations. The Queen has 54 nations, by the way, in her Commonwealth. But anyway, he's got, over 50 nations that stand behind him completely. So if he became the head of the United Nations, the president, let's say, and the Pope aligned with him and became the head of a World Council of Churches, that would take care of the two of the three branches that they need to rule the world.
But then the House of Windsor would collapse.
Correct.
Yes, and then America would be free.
No. Oh. Because the continuation, if we don't have a border, we just have a different set of fascist terrorists coming into our border, attacking us. We have as many illegal aliens as Europe does.
Yes, but I only meant in the sense that we would be free from the British rule. I'm not talking about our borders.
I would love to see the whole fake House of Windsor be flushed down the toilet. And monarchies, because they say that's a tutelary head. Wrong. She rules. She has the veto. She has the golden shares. She has the Privy Council that rules England, and no one can look into her business. She is still the Pope of the Anglican Church, which you could call, really, the Protestant Church, really. It's the breakaway church from the Catholic Church. So the Anglican Queen, Merovingian lineage, claim to Jerusalem through the Knights of Malta was one avenue. But on the other hand, the Jesuit claim, and by the way, the Knights of Malta absorbed the Templars, which is banking. Really, you could literally say that the Rothschilds are an extension of Templar banking. But what people don't know is that the blood lineage of the Savoys comes directly out of Venice and the Lombards, who were the first bankers who started this kind of evil of loaning money for wars and keeping it when the side that whoever loses doesn't matter. You keep the money of the losers. And the winners, you have a deal with them that they got to pay you back, and they can never pay you back because there's interest on the money in most cases. So that's a trick that both the House of Savoy and the House of Windsor have learned. But the Rothschilds really went with the Queen. But then the Rothschilds filtered into 5 other nations in Europe, and then they filtered into America. And the bank, the Vatican Bank, through the Knights of Malta and their supposed charity, is the largest insider trading group in the world. It has most of the current monarchies and black monarchies. That means no longer ruling, just figureheads. But they have insider trading, and they have massive wealth that goes back for centuries. That's all through the Knights of Malta. But see, the Jesuits really were in a war with the Knights of Malta. So the Jesuits are standing behind the Vatican Bank. So this Pope is splitting the Catholic Church down the middle, not only in doctrine and in dogma, but in the power of the Vatican Bank, in the power of the Knights of Malta, and in the power of the Equestrian Knights of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. And when that Pope puts the crown on whoever the King of Jerusalem is, that could determine the fate of Armageddon. You see, the Catholics, the Muslims, and the Jews all believe Armageddon will come there on the plains outside of Megiddo near Damascus. And when that happens, and the Muslims believe that when Damascus is destroyed, that's the last of the signs, all other signs have been fulfilled. And all that's waiting for the Jews is the Messiah to show up, and all that's waiting for the Catholic theologians who are led by the apocalyptic Jesuit theologians. They want a physical Jesus Christ to rule the world. All 3 of those religions of the book want hegemony according to the prophecies that concern Armageddon. Folks, it's not going to happen. Trump destroyed it. The Pope and the Queen had said we had had our last Christmas.
Yes, and we all heard it. There were videos of this.
You heard people screaming that if we don't install Al Gore's carbon footprint new tax, which is actually a new currency, that the whole world will die by a certain date. Why did they say that? Why were the leaders of the EU, why was the leader of the Catholic Church and the leader of the British Commonwealth all saying that if we didn't get these things straight and go their way, it would be the end? That was because they were predicting Trump. It was the last Christmas that Trump didn't rule, and they don't rule anymore because Trump does. And so what Trump was telling Philip II when he visited Philip VI. I keep thinking of the horrible Philip II who tortured the Templars.
And you said the Equestrian Knights earlier. I believe you meant the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre.
Correct.
Okay.
Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. And Philippe, with an F, the 6th, not Philip II, who was a French king who crucified the Templars. But anyway, you still have these old wars going on with these old institutions, the oldest institutions on the earth, and they were vying to basically take over the United Nations. They were 1 inch away from taking over the United Nations. Barack Obama had already given over America to the United Nations, signing 5 treaties, all of which the Congress did not endorse.
Well, then they're not treaties. They were just
He signed them illegally.
Yeah, well, he did. And the people that, are counting on them, well, they got another thing coming because they should know how treaties work
Oh, yes.
You you have to know that.
And he started enacting these things immediately, whether the U.S. Congress agreed to these treaties or not. But the United Nations was using America as its weapon arm. They were using the World Bank, the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, the World Trade Organization. Trump has pointed all this out, and he says they're all rigged and we're getting out of them, and he's pulled out money and blah, blah, blah. Soon it'll just all collapse. He's gotten out of the UN Council on Human Rights because it's a joke. He's gotten out of the parts of the World Trade Health Organization, the World Trade Organization. He's criticized the world. It's all going to collapse. Why? Because Trump is the destructor. He is the disruptive force to evil because he's brought lawfulness.
Well,
these groups have no lawfulness.
It seems to me that there's going to be a realignment of allies in the world.
Oh, absolutely. So here's what he told Philip VI when he came to the White House. He leaned forward and said, dude, between you and I.
Between you and me.
Between you and me. I know who they think you are, who they say you are. I know the plan. I know I wrecked the plan. Don't give up, man. Send the migrants back. We can work this out. We can get a deal. You control 700 million people and 50-some nations. Let's work together. You don't have to hide behind things. You don't have to hide behind the Queen. I'm not doing business with her anymore. Strategic Communications Laboratories, they rigged the election to the Global Engagement Center, and we know this. And the whole British intelligence through the Privy Council was part of attacking America. So look, hey, they're not our friends. And
so we're getting Spain and America back together again.
Yes, and remember that the United Kingdom thought if they got out of the European Union that they could join with America in our trading deals. No, that's not going to happen anymore. And is Britain going to get out of the EU? Probably not. And is Philip VI going to become, well, he already is one of the most powerful people on the earth, but is he going to become literally perhaps the most powerful person on the earth? It could easily happen if they try prematurely to create Armageddon and to destroy Damascus. So what is happening now? Did you just see what happened? Russia just said to Iran, get your stupid Iranian Revolutionary Guard out of Syria now, since you wouldn't obey us to take your troops off of the southern border between the Golan Heights and Syria. We're at war with you. Get out. Okay, that is unprecedented. Now that Trump has pointed out it was $5.7 billion, and everybody knows it was Obama who gave Iran the money to support Hezbollah, Hamas, to attack Yemen. That's why these things were happening, because Obama had bombed them, killed 2 million people in 7 countries, and then turned around and gave the enemy money to fight back. And then when the refugees moved to Turkey, he made a crooked deal with Erdogan and Soros to attack Europe, to send an invasion of people who were mad as heck at America. Why shouldn't they be? Obama bombed them. We didn't declare war on any of those people. Why did Obama, a Muslim, bomb his own people? They thought that he was their hero. And in the end, now they hate us even more because Obama tricked them. So what we really have now is Trump has destroyed the Queen's statement that there will be no more Christmases with her as the Queen. She was planning to move into a new position higher than the Queen. She was going to be the mother of the direct lineage of Jesus of Nazareth and the mother of the King of the world, the King of Jerusalem, and the President of the United Nations. That's what was planned for Charles.
These people are truly
Can you
delusional,
imagine that?
Charles,
yes, Charles tried to act like he was a good person, into biodynamics and into Waldorf education and into good food and into lies. No, Charles is a monster, and he was going to be set up for this. But what happened was Trump came in and he did the one thing they couldn't have imagined anyone could do: stop globalism, to stop the inevitable advance and onslaught of globalism. And the United Nations is the home of globalism. And so these two basically warring factions are continuing to war. So who's going to win? It doesn't really matter to Philip VI. He lives in a country called Switzerland where they don't allow any refugees, as far as I know. He doesn't care about the invasion. And not only that, he's removed from all of that. So does he care whether they're Muslims taking a vow to him or what religion they are? No, their vow of fealty is all that he needs. And that means the European Union, in one fell swoop, with a blink of an eye, if he was elected the President of the United Nations, and at the same time the Pope crowned him the King of Jerusalem, or he's already crowned the King of Jerusalem, made him the King of Jerusalem, that would start a war now, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. That's exactly what they attempted to do. That's why the Pope was moving out of Rome, not to Jerusalem, where he said he would run the World Council of Churches and all churches that would be turned into one church. There would be one church, one economy, only one group of people with weapons to stop everyone else from having weapons, and there'd only be one bank. And of course, we know who would run that bank. The Rothschilds Bank owns personally, 127 of the central banks, and the other ones are Rothschild influenced or Rothschild investments to start them up. We know who would run that bank, and we know where it would be run out of. But the battle between Switzerland and Britain, London, and Rome being in between, was upset by that third force. They always said the world is ruled by City of London, UK, the Vatican City, and Switzerland, Geneva. But now we've added Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. became the disruptor. And it's such a massive disruptor that I don't think either one of them are going to win.
So could this new alliance be with Spain and all of the Ibero area, Russia, and the United States against the old UK, I'll say, and the European Union? And then, of course, we've got China over here, and I know there are other countries out there, people, but the list could go on. So in this one visit, or what's occurred here, is we have a reshuffling of the alliances in the world. It's obvious that we're moving away from this so-called friendship with the United Kingdom. Is that too far to say? I mean, we do know they were meddling in our election.
It is the biggest slap in the face to the Queen to invite Philip VI to the White House.
Wow.
Huge insult.
Now, I'll bet you that there are no other Trump tweet decoders in the world that could take apart that tweet the way you have. Thank you, Thomas.
It's my pleasure, and I like that you say that we're the best, but remember, we're some of the only. We want to encourage others to.
If you're the only, you are the best. I'm sort of like Muhammad Ali. I'm the greatest until somebody out there can show us otherwise, and we want to see people out there taking these Trump tweets and drilling down and finding out the hidden meanings and the things that we should know. I've seen a few come that are starting, and they're all well and good. In fact, I had to have a chuckle. It looked to me like the old Q PSYOP group is starting to pull out Trump tweets now.
They're posting them all the time, Betsy. And just to underscore the fact that we told everyone not to believe what they were saying, which is trust Sessions, trust Horowitz, trust Rosenstein, trust Huber. Oh my gosh, you'd have to be stupid to trust them. Now what do they say? Trust the president's plan. They've completely changed their entire tone.